Welcome to Caseback Watches. My name is Tim, and in this episode I want to speak about new old stock, or NOS. And I don't want to bore you here with the technical definition. What is new old stock? We all know this. It's old stock from the past, right? Nobody has sold it, that's it. But there is another definition more important for us, and this is new old stock is the promise that you can wear the vintage vibe, the legacy, the heritage on your wrist without the hassle. Without the hassle, because we all know that vintage watches can be terrible. A friend of mine gave me this weeks ago and she wanted to know, is it something worth, owned by her dad? And I said, no, zero, because it's just a piece of damaged metal. Very sorry. And so NOS completely different. We assume immaculate, perfect condition. Absolutely worth the buy, and there's rareness in it and luck. Somebody has found a treasure of old unsold watches in immaculate condition. And of course this is gorgeous. Some people, if they read NOS, then they are in a state of erotic excitement about that, okay? And so yeah, of course the prices are high, it's wanted. And this leads to the problem, ladies and gentlemen, that the term new old stock is the most abused term in the watch world. At least this is my experience. Over 90% the watches which are advertised under new old stock aren't new old stock. They are just old watches in good condition, but with an extra high price. Here's an example. I found this on eBay in, let's say, 3 seconds. Wasn't so hard. Advertised at NOS original any car, but there are marks and signs of usage all over the watch. Plus the dial is repainted. You can see this because there is varnish on the flanks of the indices, and the minute lines are very unequal, and the Swiss is handmade with a nice brush, I think. Yeah, very nice. And at the end you can see there is no crown on this NOS watch. I mean, who needs a crown, right? If you see something like that, then assume that it's not new old stock, and then you can look for the signs that it is new old stock. And if you are really lucky and you have a piece of new old stock, what does this mean now? Immaculate condition? Is it really immaculate then? Unfortunately not. I mean, imagine some watches stored in a box of cardboard in a cellar, with humidity in the air. Sometimes they are completely ruined. They are new old stock, yes, untouched, with seals on it and everything, but they are stored improperly, and so the movement is affected by water damage. The dial is crusty, the hands are rusty, and so the watch is ruined. Unfortunately, this can be the case with new old stock. But of course you can be lucky that the thing was sealed in plastic, and then you have then new old stock. And what to do now? I still don't believe that it's new old stock, but let's assume that it is. Then you have to see your watchmaker. You have to see your watchmaker. He can double check the fact if it's new old stock, because he can see friction in the movement. And if there are worn out parts, then it is not new old stock. But okay, let's assume you have managed it. And then the thing needs a small service. Yes, the thing needs a small service. Let's assume you have bought something from the 60s or 70s. And they don't need new parts, of course, but then the watch needs new oil, and every part made of rubber has to go and has to be removed and has to be replaced, of course. Okay, so that the watch is watertight, again, waterproof, and the movement doesn't run dry, runs with proper oil. This is then very important. And then the watch is like new. Then the watch is really like new. By the way, I'm wearing my Oris pointer date. And now next question, how likely is it that you find a new old stock watch in, let's say, the higher tier of watches? And even more unlikely. I mean, ask yourself, how realistic is it that somebody has forgotten that old Rolex or 10 old Rolex watches in a box? When a watch dealer finds such treasure, how likely is it that he wants then to sell the watch to you on eBay? Not very likely. If he has this watch, then he would keep it, or he will give it to his best client, the best client he has ever had. And so not very likely that a piece, the real new old stock piece in the high tier shows up on eBay or Chrono24. No, not realistic. Absolutely not realistic. Different cases, of course, if we have mid and low tier, especially low tier. Think of those fashion watches from the past. I'm thinking of Titoni or any car. And yes, sometimes pops out any car on eBay, and it really looks like new old stock. I still don't believe that it is new old stock, but it looks like new old stock. And the chances, in my opinion, are higher that a jeweler was bankrupt back in the 70s, and there is this folder maybe with offers, and let's assume a product sample. The watch was a sample for a dealer, and now it's in this folder in plastic, new old stock, perfect. But what if it comes to parts? Let's assume you have a vintage piece on your wrist or only an older watch. Is it possible to buy an original new old stock part for this watch? And from my experience, I can tell you this is very likely that you find something. Yes, you have to, maybe you have to look a few days and weeks and months, but there are some sort of sources with new old stock watch material, watch parts. I have a good example. I have this Rolex Datejust from the 80s, and the crown was a little bit worn out. The tube was worn out, not longer waterproof, although the movement was perfect. And the watchmaker told me, don't touch it, just buy me a new original tube. I will replace that thing, and then the watch is perfect again. And I've managed this. Maybe this is interesting for you. This was an original part, looks like this. This is the old one, the replaced crown. This is an original new old stock Rolex crown, and I've bought it in Sweden. Maybe you find this interesting. Watch Parts Sweden AB, located in Ängelholm in Sweden. Yes, and they've sold me this crown for what was it, 55 euros, and yeah, the watchmaker changed it for free, and perfect solution with a new old stock watch part. And talking of watch parts, now I want to show you something very interesting, very special. A manufacturer has reached out to me, and this is the manufacturer Circular watches, made in Germany. This is a guy from Germany, and he followed his grandfather. His grandfather was the owner of Circular watches, founded the company in 1955, and now the grandson continues it. And the grandson has found in the city Pforzheim new old stock movements. And now he uses those old movements from the 70s in new watches. And this is kind of interesting. I mean, sometimes you hear this story that the manufacturer buys machinery, and then they produce with those old machines new watch movements with the old technology. But this is completely different. Here we have really a watch, and I will show you the watch in a second in the light box. A watch with a new old stock movement. And of course, exhibition Caseback, and there you can see an new old stock movement. And I had a nice conversation with the owner, and it's quite difficult to use those old movements. It's not like ETA or Zilita, where you say, hey, please send me 1,000 movements, and then every movement is in a small plastic box, and you can just use it in your watch. No, this was completely different. The movements weren't assembled. So he had a vast mess with thousands of parts, and you had to find a watchmaker trained with these movements to assemble them in the first place, and to re-oil them and everything, to make them run. And there were a few parts missing, so they had to improvise a little bit. They had to find another sources for missing parts, or they had to manufacture extras parts for these movements to make them run again. But he has managed this, and now he has his very, very special watch brand, I must say. Okay, here we are in the light box with the Circular box, 1955. Let's open it. And there's our model. Let's begin with the basics. 39 is the case diameter, which in my eyes is perfect, just perfect. The overall length of the case, including lugs, is 46. The lug width is 20, and the thickness or the slenderness is only 10. So very, very contemporary watch when it comes to the dimensions. Notice please, the case is, let's say, a composition with brushed and high polished surfaces. This bezel type of thing is high polished. The rest is brushed. Lug form Not very special, but I like this because they're rather slender. This is not so thick here, so rather slender lug design, which I enjoy. It's a sapphire crystal. This the hands are very basic, I would say, very basic form, and basic informations on the dial. Of course, the brand in this original font from the 50s, 17 rubies, and made in Germany, and very pure. Only 2 numerals, 12 and 6. So not very spectacular. In my eyes, relatively flawless. If you see those aspects like the minute hand, which is very well proportioned. Sometimes they are too short, sometimes a little bit too long, but this looks pretty good. Let me move this a little bit out of the way so that we can see the hands better. Yeah, a little bit too puristic, but if you are, let's say, a Bauhaus fan, if you are a fan of German design of the 50s, then of course you have a different view. Then you say, well, that's exactly what I want. What I find interesting is the crown. This looks very unique. I've never seen a crown with that shape. I don't know how to call it, to be frank, this crown shape here. Interesting, looks good. By the way, I realized much later that this is a balance wheel on that crown. Really nice detail. On the back side, see-through caseback with some informations on it, made in Germany, model name, and not very advanced here, but all the basic informations are there. And there you can see the POW movement, which looks tooly, but this, the owner told me this is exactly the case, that's exactly what he wants. He wants that we see the tooly look of this old 70s movement. The production quality here, I must say, is pretty good. And I think he hasn't tried to cut costs in every corner, because screws are more expensive than the screw down caseback. The brushing, of course, is more expensive than polishing everything. The special crown was, I think, relatively pricey, excuse me, and so on. And now we can speak about the strap. I'm not the biggest fan of the color, but the quality here, I mean, wow. These guys nowadays really know how to make straps. I've noticed this as well with the Tiger straps from an older video. I really love this system with this lever here. It's so quick and it's so easy to change the strap without any tools. And it's a very thick leather quality. I could imagine that this thing lasts really a few months and years maybe. Branded glass, but this is not very special. This is just an etching here. Made in Germany. So overall, production value is there, I think. Production value really is there. The feel of the movement, to tell you this is, wow, this, wow. Huh? This is super smooth, super buttery. Okay, this is impressive. Sometimes you with those basic models you hear this those noisy things, but this is incredibly smooth to wind. Yeah, okay. Okay, I like the feel of the movement, I must say. I like the feel. I've said this often in these videos that sometimes I don't like the feel of the movement. I mean, this is not very logic. Sometimes it's a little bit over picky, but you know what I mean. If you're a watch lover, then you want to feel the mechanic in it. Yeah, but overall, yes, I must say production value is there. The problem now is the price, because the price has to reflect the NOS movement in it. And so the price for this watch is 790 euros, which is roughly above 800 US dollars. In my eyes, this is a little bit too much. If you are not informed about the NOS aspect there, then you would say, oh, this is a bit pricey. Let's a realistic price for this without this aspect, without the history, and it would maybe in region 400, 500. And so I'm not sure if this is easy for the manufacturer, but maybe he doesn't need it easy. I think he's on a sort of mission there with his old company. Okay, conclusion here. If you have bought yourself a nice NOS, a real NOS watch, then congratulations. And for all the others, keep your eyes peeled. Keep your eyes peeled, guys. Assume that it's not the real NOS. And if you ask me, sometimes it's more realistic to look for a vintage watch in very, very good condition. Pay for the service, and then you have the same thing, nearly the same thing like the NOS watch, which also needs a small service, and maybe the prices are equal for both watches, for the vintage watch in perfect condition and the NOS watch with this extra high price and the service. And so my opinion is a little bit overrated, the term, but of course if you have found a new old stock piece for yourself, then heaven. Okay, and now one last thing. During my last video, which made some sort of noise, how to rip off customers, the video received several hundred comments, and I hope I have read them all, and I received many emails with questions, and I think it's a good time to make another Q&A video. And let's keep it simple. Just post your questions under this video in the comments. I will give you some days, and then I will pick, let's say, 10 questions and produce the Q&A video. Okay, and that's it. Please join me on Instagram if you like, Caseback Tim. And now let me thank you very much for your attention. Maybe there's a hidden outro for you, and maybe until next time.